Mark Hitchcock is a fascinating man. He's the author of nearly 20 books related to end-time Bible prophecy, including the best-selling 2012, The Bible and the End of the World. He has a Master of Theology and also a PhD from Dallas Theological Seminary, and he serves as senior pastor in a church in Oklahoma, and he's also adjunct professor at Dallas Theological Seminary. And on top of all of that, he holds a law degree. What did you get first, Mark? The law degree or the theology degrees?
The law degree. Yeah, I was a lawyer, and then I was for 4 years, and then went to Dallas Seminary after that.
Now, why? I mean, you're just established in law, and then you just decide you want to study theology?
Well, some say I repented of being a lawyer, you know, of that, and went to seminary. But no, I was a lawyer for 4 years, and really when I started into law school, and during that time, I really hadn't been seeking the Lord's guidance really in my life, just kind of doing what seemed best to me. And I began to be able to teach different classes at our church. Started with junior high boys and began to do some adult classes. Just began to study the Bible, and that just really began to take over my life. So I just began to pray about that, and the Lord led me and my wife down to Dallas Seminary. And just, you know, I've never looked back from that point on.
Now, you're going to be our Truth to Go teacher for the month of June. And we're looking forward to your segments. And we're going to be featuring, in fact, this book, The Amazing Claims of Bible Prophecy, What You Need to Know in These Uncertain Times. But before we talk about that, what about 2012, The Bible and the End of the World? I haven't read the book. Is it selling well?
It has been, right. It's been selling very well.
And just give us a quick summary of why there's all this fascination about 2012.
Well, it really goes back to the Mayan calendar. You know, the Mayans were a people who lived down in Mesoamerica. They knew a tremendous amount about astrology, astronomy, mathematics, and their calendar ends, their long count calendar, they had several of them, ends on December the 21st of 2012, the winter solstice.
Right.
And so because of that, many believe that the world's going to end at that time, or maybe there's going to be some great new beginning that's going to take place. Right. And basically what I do in the book is kind of debunk that whole idea. I look at what the Mayans say, Nostradamus, all the different things that people use, kind of debunk those, and then show how the Bible's the only really reliable source, and then talk about what the Bible says is going to happen.
Because I mean, I fly a lot, and I go through bookstores and airports, and I see these books on 2012, and
yes.
I think it's almost becoming a movement.
Oh, it is.
I mean, people are as almost paranoid about 2012 as they were about the dawning of the new millennium.
That's right.
But that's interesting. I got to read that.
Well, they call that the real Y2K. A lot of them are calling that
the real Y2K,
or the Mayan Y2K.
The Mayan
is what
Y2K.
they're calling it. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you've written about that. Before I want to focus in on just a couple of the chapters in this book, because we certainly can't cover it all in a few minutes. But before doing that, prophecy can be so subjective in its interpretation. You know, I've been in the ministry for 40 years, and I pastored in Jerusalem, as you know, for 7 years, and I heard every end-time scenario from every wacko in Christendom, to the point where I really wrestle with cynicism when it comes to anybody who purports to expose the meaning of the prophetic passages of the Old Testament. Having said that, as a kind of a personal disclaimer, why prophecy? Why are you so fascinated with this? And how is it that you've managed, as I've read your book, to come up with such a reasonable approach? It just is so refreshing.
Well, you know, Bible prophecy, I think, is important for several reasons. One very obvious reason, 28% of the Bible was prophetic at the time it was written. So, you know, I always tell people when they ask me, why do you love Bible prophecy? I love the Bible. So to me, if you love the Bible, you're going to love Bible prophecy. And I think if we don't know how to interpret, at least have some basic idea of how to interpret this, the Bible's going to kind of be a closed book to us, or large parts of it, we're just not going to understand it. But the other thing I think that's very practical to me is, you know, prophecy, I think understood correctly, is one of the most powerful motivating factors to live for the Lord that we have in the Bible. Because if we really believe that perhaps today could be the day that Jesus comes back, it's going to change the way a person lives, and that's the way it's given to us in the New Testament. But I think when it comes to interpreting prophecy, there are a lot of different views out there. There's certain non-negotiables. You know, to me, if you're a Christian, we believe in the return of Christ, literally, physically. We believe in a resurrection of the dead, and we believe in a retribution or a final judgment. Those are the non-negotiables. Now, the other things, you know, we want to try to understand the best we can, and I just think if we apply a consistent, normal, or plain hermeneutic or understanding or interpretation of the Bible, I think we can understand a lot of what God is telling us about the future.
Now, it would be fascinating to get into what you write about the prophet Daniel, and also you have real expertise in the book of Revelation. You did your doctorate on Revelation, which I think has got to be an awesome task. But let's talk about chapters 7 and 8, really, is where you deal with Jesus. Mm-hmm. In 7, you talk about the Bethlehem prophecies, and in 8, you talk about the shadow of the cross. In Micah, we read this: "As for you, Bethlehem Ephratah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His goings forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity." You see that as a distinct prophecy with regard to Jesus being born in Bethlehem.
That's right, yeah, and that's an amazing prophecy too, because it says that he's the one whose goings forth are from old, from everlasting, who's going to be born. So, this pictures the eternal one stepping out of eternity into time to be born. And of course, what's fascinating is when you get to Matthew chapter 2, when the wise men come to Jerusalem and they ask, the scribes there, Herod calls them in and says, "Where's the Messiah going to be born?" They don't have to, go look around for it. They immediately say he's going to be born in Bethlehem. They quote Micah chapter 5 and verse 2. And this is a prophecy written 700 years before Messiah was born. And it doesn't just say that he'd be born in Bethlehem, because there was actually another Bethlehem up north, but this was Bethlehem Ephrathah, which was the Bethlehem down in the south, down in the area of Judea, which is so specific. Of course, it was just a small little insignificant village at that time, but it said that he would be born there. And of course, it took a worldwide census to get Joseph and Mary to come down there for Jesus to be born in that exact place. And so, these prophecies they truly are amazing, astonishing prophecies.
Yeah. And, in my years in Jerusalem, I discussed a lot of these prophecies with Jewish friends of mine, some of them rabbis. And, you come to a sentence like this from their Bible, mm-hmm. from Micah: "His goings forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity." Yes. Very difficult, for a lot of my Jewish friends to conceive of a Messiah who comes, if you will, from the days of eternity. Yeah. It's difficult to apply that in space and time. The Christian interpretation or hermeneutic is that this is Jesus, fully God and fully man, and that explains how this Messiah can come from eternity.
That's right, because we have a Trinitarian view of God, where they have a Unitarian view of God, really, and God is one. It says in the Old Testament, we believe that as well, but he's one in essence, he's one in substance, but he's three in person. And that's where the issue comes in. That's where the issue comes in, with Islam, and where they don't believe that Jesus is truly God, that he's very God, and very man, a very man. Mm-hmm. And that's where the real difference really lies. It's all, in fact, we would say, I think, as Christians, that really that is the ultimate issue, is the person of Jesus Christ. That's why we're followers of Christ. We're Christians. Yeah. Because of what we believe about him.
Now, here's a prophecy from Isaiah 7 that is a struggle for a lot of Christians who are from a liberal perspective. Mm-hmm. "The Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel." Now, there are a number of church leaders who say, come on now, surely Jesus couldn't have been born of a virgin. Mm-hmm. He had to have a father, and this concept of an immaculate conception is just a bit much. Mm-hmm. What's your comment?
Well, a lot of people come to the Bible, and nowadays especially, with an anti-supernatural bias. So anything that's supernatural can't be true, and so they have to find a naturalistic explanation for that. And people will say, well, obviously you can't have a virgin birth. Well, people knew that back then too. It's not like people back then didn't know the facts of life. Right. That's the whole point. It's a miracle. Mm. And obviously for Jesus coming into the world to be God, but also to be man, but to not have the original sin, he was born of the woman without a human father. And so in that way he can be God, but he can also be man. But he was unfallen man, sinless man. And, that's the miracle of the person of Jesus Christ. And really, to me, it all goes back to your whole worldview. You know, if you go all the way back and you believe that there's a God who made everything, who created everything that exists out of nothing, then these other lesser miracles really are no stumbling block for us.